and welcome to another episode of Frame and Reference. I'm your host, Kenny McMillan, and today I'm talking with Jeffrey Jur, the DP of the hugely popular show Bridgerton, which is available now, and he's shooting season 2 as we speak. So, or depending on when you listen to this, it's already out. I don't know. Time is an illusion. We had a great conversation, as always. I've said this a couple times, but I feel like these interviews are getting better and better. And I, as an interviewer, am learning more and more, which is nice. Jeffrey was fantastic. We learn a lot about the sort of world of television cinematography, which has changed pretty drastically, because now television and film are almost one thing where they didn't used to be. So I think you're really going to enjoy this one. I certainly did, and I'm going to shut up and then, as always, immediately start talking from the past. So please enjoy this conversation with Jeffrey Jur. To start off, what got you into cinematography? I know you got started. You're from Chicago?
I'm from Chicago. Yes, I got the bug early on in high school. I was doing a little bit of photography, still photography. I had some photography classes, and then I transferred and went to a school that had a film class. I thought, oh, that'd be fun. I should try that. And this is back in Super 8 days, and I started shooting films, and I was very prolific in high school. I made about 5 movies, and I made one film that was about a kid who moves into a new neighborhood, which is my story, basically, a little bit of my life. And the principal of the school really liked the concept to show new kids, what it's like to come into a new neighborhood. And he said, well, can we make copies of it? Well, Super 8's kind of just, the quality doesn't really translate very well. And so I said, can I, if you give me a little bit of money, I'll shoot it in 16 millimeter. So, and then we can make copies from that. And so he said, okay, how much do you need? I said, $400. So it ended up costing $800, I think, eventually. But I remade the film with real actors and I shot it in 16 black and white. And it was a film that actually got me a scholarship at Columbia College in Chicago to go there. And so that sort of started me on my journey, as it were.
Yeah. So do you think there's sort of a modern analog to that sort of, because I've kind of heard that a lot, for instance, I got started in high school, but no one was going to really reward a mini DV sort of slapped together Matrix copy.
Yeah.
Do you think that sort of analog still exists today, where someone can make a sort of student film and get noticed enough to make it to like high school or something like that? Or is that kind of gone?
I think so. Well, it seems like the technology is so advanced now, you can make a fairly professional product, I think, on your phone or on your Mac or whatever. So yeah, I think if you have a great story and you tell it well, and it has some emotion to it, if not professionalism, people are going to notice. A good movie is a good movie, no matter how it's made. So I think, yeah, you can still get noticed that way. I don't know if there's scholarships available still, but it's a way to break in. And it's amazing that you have this kind of access these days, digitally. And the scaling up was tough in the early days with film processing, all that stuff. You really had to, be careful about spending money. You couldn't get too deep, elaborate, but so it's gotten easier, I guess I want to say, more prevalent everywhere, available everywhere. So maybe it's a little harder to stand out, but I think if you do something from the heart and create something that means something to you, it's going to reach out to people.
Yeah. Well, and the key obviously, pardon me, the key obviously is story, having a great story. And there's so many tools now that can help you out. When you were in college, did you kind of have like a friend group that you worked with? What was that experience like for you as a collaborator?
Yeah, it's absolutely where I learned about a film set and collaboration. When I was shooting these films in high school, it was basically me doing everything. I had a friend helping me push a wheelchair for a dolly, that kind of stuff. But in film school, it's really where you learn to collaborate. You learn what your specialty maybe is. I certainly went in as a filmmaker, but came out as a cinematographer. It just appealed to me as far as being at the kind of creative core of many different projects. I had friends that were directing, but it took forever. It was years sometimes to make the one film, to just process, to edit, to go through the whole process, and to get money if it was that kind of a scale of project. And whereas I could work on a lot of different films and enjoy that creative sort of process. So it really caught me pretty early on in film school that that's what I wanted to do and specialize in. So yeah, I learned a lot of hands-on stuff at that school in particular. That's a really great school for just making films. At that time, you could study in there was an intellectual and academic direction you could go in with film classes. And I just wanted to make films. It was very personal to me. And it was a way of getting my voice out that I didn't have in my life other than through films and photography.
Sure. Yeah, I went to Arizona State for film, which is a little less prestigious, but I do remember there was everyone was drawn to film production, and then there was film and media studies, and anyone who was in film and media studies either intended to be there, half of them, and then like there was always the sort of kids who for some reason production didn't sit, they weren't able to nail it, and so they were just like always stuck in studies, and we're like, we're gonna make it, and then using that opportunity is definitely where in college, especially like a fun college like ASU, is what can get away from you. What kept you sort of driven to not get distracted by life? It's easy was it just a singular vision? I will make film.
Yeah, pretty much. It's been like that ever since. I've never wanted to do anything else. I've only done this since since I was about 16 or 17. I was very young when I went to film school. It was a school that was sort of a second school for a lot of folks there. They had degrees, they had gone to had studied other fields, and then wanted to sort of specialize in film. So most of them were older. There was Vietnam vets at this time too, coming into the educational system. And so, and I was, I think 18 or 19 when I was there. So I was pretty young. But again, it was just something very, very personal, and it's something I needed to do. I needed to be able to tell my stories through filmmaking, and then through cinematography, through other people's projects. So yeah, it's been just that. I mean, you mentioned a bond of sort of friends. I've certainly been in touch with people for all those years. There's still some people hanging in Chicago and doing amazing work. It's a tough place to stay in the film business because it's primarily, at the time when I was there, certainly it was a lot of industrials and commercials, things like that. There were feature films that would come and you could maybe get on the crew, but you were, sort of peripheral to the process. And a lot of people said, California or New York is really where you have to go. So I spent a few years working as like an assistant. There was a PA. I was an electrician on the Blues Brothers for about 3 weeks and made a bunch of money. But I was always shooting. I was always shooting for free. I wasn't making money doing that. So I needed to work as a PA or, a camera assistant on industrials, 16 millimeter industrials, things like that. But eventually I got enough stuff together, and I was lucky to get a break in Chicago. There was a producer that did projects for American Playhouse for PBS. So these were real actors and real directors that would come in, and it was a local crew and myself, and we made films that were seen, on television, on public television. So that sort of started me heading west and into California.
Sure. You had mentioned, film is deeply personal to you, but as the cinematographer, I think that's something that maybe hits a lot of people, certainly hit me, was as the cinematographer, you're not necessarily speaking with your voice. Did that transition hit you funny, or was, how did you navigate that sort of?
It continues to hit me funny because you're always telling someone else's story. And what you try to do, of course, is to find stories that mean something to you. At the beginning, you're just happy to be working and you're learning from every project you're on. But eventually, you catch up, hopefully, with people, filmmakers, and with projects that have your worldview. It started with me. I started working with John Dahl on some projects. We did a couple of features way back, and been doing television together since John transitioned to television more. So, when you find somebody like that you sort of connect with, you're able to have a lot of your voice and your worldview come through your work.
Yeah. When you were working on Blues Brothers, did you as a young filmmaker, did you notice anything that stuck with you to this day, like some lesson that you learned or a technique maybe?
It was very old school at the time. They were using arc lights actually, and they were bouncing them into the ceilings. They were shooting downtown Chicago, and just the scale of a project like that was amazing to watch. And it wasn't anything I really aspired to. I liked smaller personal films. I grew up in the time of Last Picture Show and The Conversation, European films, Last Tango in Paris. Just very personal sort of stories. So this was, Blues Brothers was like a huge, studio picture. It wasn't anything I really I saw myself ever doing. I've worked on some bigger features for sure, but nothing on that scale. I don't know if that I learned anything. It was just amazing to witness that level of filmmaking and just see it, sort of in front of me. But yeah, I don't know if that was an aspiration for me.
Sure, you get a taste of the volume, the gain of a production like that. Get you mentally prepared.
All the trucks,
just the giant box trucks. Talking about film and television, you've mostly worked in television, and the look of TV absolutely has changed from I was checking out your IMDb, even something like It's Pat all the way to Dexter, one of my favorite series of all times. And even it's, you had worked on 2 episodes of Westworld.
Yes.
How has television changed from a cinematography perspective throughout the years? And are there any sort of examples from those sort of bigger shows that you can point to that were maybe tentpole, maybe even stuff you didn't work on, like tentpole, like that actually changed the look of modern television?
Well, I have to say I was part of a show for HBO called Carnival. And it was sort of the beginning of that level of production value that was very heightened, obviously really high end and feature level production design and post-production and acting, and just everything about it was at a very high level. So it was amazing to be part of that. That was about 2003, 2004. And HBO was just starting to, get into that level of production. They had The Sopranos and Sex and the City. 6 Feet Under was amazing. But Carnival, I think, was probably one of the first period things. And then Rome and a few other projects came in after that. But it was sort of the early stages of expecting a feature quality on television. And it was thrilling to be part of it. It was amazing that was happening and that television was going that way. I mean, when I started out doing television, it was considered, secondary somehow to features. I remember I'd been doing small movies, independent films, and I worked on I got hired to do a television series called Terrorist on Trial. And I remember the producer calling me and saying, well, this is television. Are you going to be fast enough for it? Which was funny because the films I've been doing been 25 days or, maybe 30 days at the most. So, I still had to convince him that I was fast enough. But in those days, it was considered, well, it's television, and you couldn't cross over. It was tricky I had a lot of advice about how much television to do, how many features, that if you're doing features, stay with features. In fact, when I was offered Dirty Dancing, the producer had to convince me. I had actually taken another project that was a television thing. I like the script better, and I was making a huge mistake. She told me, "You really should be doing features. This is a great project for you. You should really do this." And convinced me to turn my ways around. And I thank her. I'm grateful every day when I think about that, working on that movie, that she did that for me. So yeah, features are amazing because you're sort of working with one director. You're sort of have one vision, one sort of singular vision going forward, which I like. And on television, it tends to be a little more dissipated. You have different directors coming in. Different people are the key vision sort of guide. It can be a showrunner, it can be the head writer, it can be a producer, it can be a producer director, stuff like that. So it's a different sort of journey that you have to go through to find your creative outlet with television. I miss features. I would love to go back to them and do them. They seem to be very, very small or very, very big.
Yeah.
It's hard to find those mid-level, projects these days. But I have to say the writing in television is amazing and so good and such a high level. And acting, everybody crosses over back and forth between features and television. So I'm really grateful that it's, not an issue anymore.
Yeah. You had touched a little bit there on consistency. How do you, as a cinematographer, especially in a show, I don't know if this is an example for you specifically, but in maybe a show where there are a ton of directors coming in and there's not like, a very strict show Bible. How do you maintain that consistency, and how do you continue to work quickly when someone might come in and go, oh no, I don't even like that? Or does that even happen?
Oh, it happens all the time. And it's a struggle. Any television cinematographer will tell you this. You have to be, you have to be gingerly about it. Directors have their comfort levels. There's sometimes an energy that comes in that they'll provide, which may be a little different from the show itself. But I think there's a way to implement their new ideas into what the show is about. Certainly there might be things that seem off base, but I think you can have a conversation about that, like saying, well, this is something that we've never done before. Are you sure this is something you think is important to do? So, you have to be careful about it. It's a heightened creative space and everybody's working under a lot of pressure. So hopefully when the directors come on, they understand the film, and there's a certain language to every show. There's a certain sort of style to every show. And it's, what's fun is to play within that, almost like a genre, like you would do a Western or science fiction or whatever. Each show has its own sort of personality. And as a cinematographer, you're primarily responsible. You're often by yourself or one of two or three people that are the through line for the project. So the producers and the showrunners are relying on you on the floor, on the floor to maintain that consistency. So it can be difficult sometimes, but often directors are amazing when they come in and deliver something that you maybe hadn't expected, or giving you something that you've always wanted to do. That's the best experience then. So yeah, it's an ongoing thing for sure.
Sure. Does television, due to that speed and due to that change in vision, does that not allow you to sort of push the boundaries of, say, your lighting or setups or anything like that? Or is there kind of a base speed that you kind of have to be at on a television show?
Yes, certainly. You have to get your days for the most part. It's very difficult to reschedule stuff. So this is something on your mind all the time. But some days are better than others. Like today we had a little easier day, and it wasn't a way to to take a few more chances to get some more alternate shots that maybe you know, are something unique, or tell a story in a different way. There's some days are better than others when you can, you know, sort of expand the look of a show. And other days you just have to get through it. It's a lot of dialogue. The producers like a lot of coverage, say. A lot of shows I find in television are put together in post. So they're expecting a lot of pieces to be able to maybe rebuild some of the scenes. You know, it's written one way, but they wanted to take it another way, and they don't have the footage to do that. So it's important. You find with a lot of television directors, this is more network TV that I worked on, where they expect a certain amount of you know, shots that help them in post-production and editing. Other shows are more designed and more specific, and those are a dream when you know you're telling a story with one shot or two shots, and getting a scene easily. Those actually tend to be a little easier to work on because you're not trying to get many pieces for a scene.
Sure. I've noticed, obviously I haven't seen all of your work. You're quite prolific, but for the few things that I have checked out, you do seem to have a relatively consistent style. Did you, do you have any like influences, anything that you kind of like to, not mimic obviously, but
Yeah,
looks that you're naturally drawn to? Technique, styles.
yeah. I mean, you know, they'll look at Roger Deakins, or you know, people that use cinematographers that use natural light and tell the story with how the camera moves and how the light comes in, but that it's not just lit, it has something to it behind it, a story, a vision, an idea, and you're telling the story of the script. You know, the script is really guiding you as far as what it's supposed to look like. Is it dark? Is it isolated? Are people isolated? Is there a lot of energy in the scene? Whatever. So the script is kind of the first thing, but cinematographers that use natural light, I'm always trying to figure out where the light should be coming from. It always has to come from a particular place. I hate just putting up a backlight because it looks pretty. So sometimes you do have to do that.
Sure.
The hair is disappearing into the background or whatever. But even then you try to give it a reason and have it come from a real place. So authenticity is really important to me, and the cinematographers that are you know, motivated by that appeal to me quite a bit. You know, Roger Deakins obviously does incredible work, very natural and beautiful, and it's tough to figure out. You know, it seems offhand, it seems like just the light in the room, but it's the most amazing light in that room, and it's coming from under the door, or it's coming through this little hole in the wall, or you know, from headlights or something. He finds ways to tell the story and to light a scene naturally, and that's amazing. And I'm always try to aspire to that.
Yeah, it's not funny you brought him up, but there is a very large fan base of Rogers, and I've noticed the two filmmakers who seem to be the internet darlings are Deakins and Fincher, and obviously Fincher's not a DP, but he has a very specific look.
Yeah.
As someone who is in the ASC and maybe has met these people, can you speak to maybe why everyone is so obsessed with maybe those two specific styles? Because they are quite different, but both, as you're saying, natural-ish.
You know, I think about this a lot. I try to figure out what it is and that's appealing about these kind of cinematographers, and Gordon Willis as well, and Conrad Hall. You know, they have a voice. They have a very specific voice. You recognize a Roger Deakins movie when you see it. You recognize a David Fincher movie when you see it. Conrad Hall, and certainly Gordon Willis. Not that they're doing the same thing in every movie, but that there's something about what they do, and even more importantly, what they don't do. And this is where, when I go to Gordon Willis quite a bit, because he will tell that story in one shot, and he won't do the reverse, and he won't do the coverage, and he won't give you a lot of things that you think you might need, because he found the one thing that tells that story simply. And that's amazing. And on a movie set, there's often a lot of fear about getting enough stuff, making sure you have all the pieces. Is it strong enough? And it takes guts, and it takes a great will, a strong will, to overcome that, because the feeling on sets with certain directors, especially, is I need a lot of pieces. I need this and this and this and this other thing. It's like, no, you don't need that. This is telling the story. It's beautiful like this. So that's takes a great amount of will. And these guys are really, these folks are really, really strong minded about it. So that's something I aspire to. I don't have that personality necessarily, but it's a point you arrive at occasionally, and you see that shot was amazing. We don't need anything else. We don't need to go in closer. We don't need to go wider, whatever it is. So I think those are the things. That strong will is, I think, what's appealing to a lot of people, seeing that strong sort of personality behind the photography.
Yeah, it's sort of a confidence in what you're doing, and that's
yes. It's tough because there's a lot at stake. These movies are expensive, There's a lot of people telling you a lot of different things, and you just have to believe in yourself and your vision. It helps to have a really strong director as well. Then you're sort of not alone with these things. And when you have that, that team is incredible.
Yeah. Do you, kind of speaking of to that point of like, they always want stuff. Are you a multi-camera person, a single cam person? Do you have a preference, or are there maybe tips that you've learned to go from one to the other?
Yeah, I don't mind multi-cameras. I work with 2 cameras a lot. 3 cameras makes my head explode. I don't even know how a director can watch 3 performances, or even 2 performances from 3 angles, or even 1 performance from 3 angles. They might miss stuff. I've done it, and it's kind of fun in a way. It's sort of like, 3D chess. It's challenging. It's still photography, and you're still trying to make it look good. But sometimes you get something interesting that you wouldn't normally get, especially in network television. You're getting your over, you're getting your wider over, but then you get the off angle shot or the high or something unusual through the table that you wouldn't normally spend time getting. You can get that with that second or third camera. So we've been doing a lot of single camera on Bridgerton, because often there's these sort of tableaus, which are very wide and very specific, and, sort of elegant and precise in their framing. And it's tough to just slam in another camera and get something off axis. It's not giving you something you're going to use. It's just another shot, and it may not be that, precise. So often we're doing these wide sort of tableaus that are masters, and then we'll cover. Then we'll go in close. We want to be closer, and then maybe an off-axis profile, something like that. We just did a scene last night where we were shooting tight overs on 2 guys talking to each other, and we did an off-axis angle that was interesting, because it was almost a profile. It was like you could see 2 eyes, but what was nice is you had a moment, you had a shot connecting the 2 characters, and you had one that was their own shot. So getting those together was kind of interesting. Actors love it, obviously, because you're getting a lot of stuff all at once. Directors, of course, like it, and the production likes it, because you're getting through your day and getting a lot of pieces. So sometimes quantity gets the heat off of you a little bit. When you're getting a lot of setups, everybody's happy, but they still have to be good.
Yeah. You can't just compulsively put a camera there. Find me something. I've heard a handful of people doing like, just put the camera somewhere, find me something. And then it's like, well, you're just wasting, well, not film, but are you wasting cards? Actually, that's a good question. How has technology, obviously in many ways, but from your perspective, how has technology aided you in working quickly? And what are things you could do today that you couldn't do on Dirty Dancing, for instance?
Right. Seeing exactly how you think it's going to look in your final on set is spectacular. I mean, it used to all be kept in our heads, like, okay, I know this is 3 stops down. I know that's going to be 2 stops over, and this color is going to do that, and that light's going to do this. And you're hoping the next day that it does look like that. And after a while, you realize you're going to get those things, but you're the only one that has that sort of vision. But to see it on set and to know that you're getting exactly what you had set out to do means you know going home that every day that you've got the show that you want to get, the scenes, the shots that you want to get, so that you're not sweating out dailies. I mean, I don't miss those days at all, where you're worried about the steps that happen after you, and if someone is changing stuff on you in post-production, or if it's a poor dub or something, or there's colors shifts or whatever, all those things that you can get in trouble for. Certainly, why is this blue? Why is it all green? And you go, okay, what did you look at it on? Was a bad monitor on your computer, or was a bad batch in the lab, stuff like that. So with digital, obviously you don't have that. You know what you're getting right away. You have the DIT there. You're seeing what you want to see. I'm working with Technicolor and an amazing color timer in Los Angeles, Pankaj Bajpai, who I've worked with for 15 years. And he color timed the show last season, and he's now provided us with LUTs that we work with on set. And it's amazing because now the show really looks like what we know is what it looked like last season. We know now what it's going to look like going forward. And I have 4 or 5 different LUTs that I work with, and I'm seeing the show like as if it's airing, and with some variations. Obviously the lighting we're having control over and all that, but just knowing that it's going through the pipeline the way you see it, and that everybody else is seeing it as well is a big relief.
Sure. Are those LUTs like tungsten daylight indoors outdoors kind of thing, or what are those? Why are they different?
Yeah, there's a contrast to it. He's provided sort of a show look, 2 show looks. One is a little lower contrast, so for night work and stuff, the primary show look is a little contrasty, and when we go to night work, it tends to get a little crunchy. So he did one where it's a little more open, and then we have some flashback looks where we have different flashbacks throughout last season and this season. So it's nice to know what that's going to look like. Then you can light to those flashback LUTs as well. A lot of times they'll slap a look on after the fact, and it's nice to know going in what it's going to look like.
Yeah. Are you still a meter guy, or do you pretty much just light to the monitor?
I still use my eyes. I just can tell on a set what I think it's going to look like. I'll pull my meter out once in a while, but I've been looking at light for so many years that I can tell when something's not right, too bright, feels within a right range. I'll sometimes go to the monitor if we're pushing the limits, if we're going really dark or really bright. It's like I'll look at the raw feed to make sure that I'm not losing any information on the windows, or if I'm seeing something I don't want to see, is it going to go away? So, I use it to kind of check extremes.
Sure.
But as far as the overall look, I'll put up lights knowing that they're going to do a certain thing. I don't have to spot check the monitor every time I turn on a light, every time I adjust something, because I know already what it's going to do pretty much. And color, I'll still keep the numbers in my head. Okay, this one's 2800 Kelvin, that one's 3600. The moonlight's coming in at 5600 or 5000. I kind of know what those colors are going to look like, so I don't need to go to the monitor. I mean, I'm also working with a small monitor on set, which is very handy. I like having a presence on set. I find that it changes the tone of the set. When you're there and you're lighting, like we used to do when I was with a meter, the crew understood what you were looking at and what you needed. When you're off the set and in a DIT tent somewhere, it's like you don't exist anymore. You're gone, and it's hard to get people. You're on the radio trying to get the shot set, and so you can see what it looks like. Get people to manipulate the things you need to move around. So I try to have a monitor on set that has the correction that we're working with the LUTs fed into it, so that I'm actually seeing it on set small, like a 17-inch monitor. so that I can be on set, see what's going on, understand the limitations of what I'm asking for. It's like, I can't back that light up because there's a wall there. I can see that when I'm on set, stuff like that. So digital has really become amazing to use. And because of, I think at first with the Alexa, I felt that was truly like a film style cinema camera. Although, because Netflix requires, a little higher resolution, and we couldn't get the LF minis at the time last season, we went with the Sony Venice. And I had friends, John Joffin, as a great cinematographer, also was hesitant and loved Alexas. And I said, what do you think of it? And he said, you're going to like it a lot. You're really going to like it. So he was very happy with it. Obviously, we love the 2500 base. That's amazing. I knew I was going to be shooting a lot of candlelit scenes and stuff. So I figured that would come in handy, and I didn't know how much it would matter because without a lot of grain or noise increase, you're able to shoot literally in candlelight settings. I had a couple scenes where a lot of candles were around, but I had film lights as well, and I kept turning off one film light, then another film light. Pretty soon, no lights were on. It was just candlelight, and it looked amazing. And I started using actually candles to fill in, like do little eye lights and things. And it was all candles that I was getting from the prop guys, little low candles I would try to hide on tables for dinner scenes, stuff like that. So rather than put up a light, which felt really crude and harsh, once you're at this sort of amazing Barry Lyndon level of lighting, you want to keep it sort of analog and keep it very natural. So yeah, and the camera's just spectacular at that level.
Yeah. What was your camera package? Then you said Venice, and then obviously the lenses. What is it this time? Same thing?
Yeah, same thing. Yeah, I love the Venice. We worked with Arri Signature Primes last season, which I loved. I don't shoot wide open. I know a lot of folks do. I like my assistants, so I give them a little help. But I love the control. We're also shooting at 6K. So the depth of field, to be able to control that, how much something is out of focus, how much it's in focus, that tool is amazing to have that kind of control. We're putting NDs in night interiors because we're trying to throw the background out. So I'll shoot at a 2 or a 2.8. Generally, I'm at around a 4. A lot of our stuff is at a 4. So with these lenses, you're working with a little longer lenses because of that larger format. The depth of field is beautiful. There's still a beautiful fall off, but you can still get super sharp faces. I found it wide open. The lenses, the depth of field was, even on a flat shot, if the head was slightly back, I would be out of focus. This one would be in focus. It was tough. It was, I wouldn't wish that on any camera assistant. So T4 was like perfect. You still felt that thin depth of field if you wanted it. And also the lenses were beautiful with out of focus candle wicks and things that were going to be in the background. They had a perfect circle, which I felt was right for the show, and very beautiful and sort of, organic and romantic.
Yeah.
So yeah, we went with the same package this year as well.
I could see how, I was just watching the show with my mom. Like I said, I was visiting her over the weekend, and we were watching that in Halston. And I was kind of, she was asking me like, all right, what are you even looking for? Because she doesn't know. She's like, I've heard you talk about, are you talking about another guy we interviewed? Are you guys talking about numbers again? Yeah, 2.8. What's your favorite again? And she would start pointing out like, oh, what's that? I'm like, oh, that's a lens flare. She's like, why? I'm like, oh, but I could see how like, even the shape of an iris could distract someone maybe brand new. Or someone who knows what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Slightly off topic, just because you had mentioned the depth of field and stuff. Have you seen what's your opinion? This is just a fun question, I guess. But Army of the Dead being shot at 0.95 the whole time.
Oh, really? I know a lot of people are shooting wide open. And I hear this from my camera assistants because they're all grateful to me because I'm shooting at a 4 pretty much. So
Yeah.
they're like, oh my God, thank you. Uh, but I'm like, well, what's going on? Why are people shooting wide open? I have to say that it's part of the look of what's going on right now. Even finding focus and missing and having that sort of fluid feel of the lack of depth of field is beautiful. It's amazing. It wasn't right for me for this show, but I understand the urge to do that. It's a beautiful stylistic choice. I know that a lot of people shoot wide open, even day exteriors or whatever. They just put a ton of ND in, open that lens up. Everything has to be wide open, and it's part of the style of cinematography these days for sure.
Yeah. Do you see yourself going back to Super 35 given the option, or are you really enjoying the full format?
Oh, I'd love to shoot. I'd love to shoot film. On Westworld, they are. It's a religion. Shooting film there is an absolute, adamant religion there, and it's fun. It was fun to go back to that, I have to say, because it's a muscle memory that I have, and it was fun to sort of get back into that. No monitor, just looking at stuff with your eyes and knowing what it's going to do. It was a kind of a dream to go back to that. I would do it in a second. There's a show I might do in the future, and they want it to look different somehow, and I'm like, I have an idea. Why don't you shoot it in film? It usually blows people away. We did it on speaking of Dexter, the very controversial ending of Dexter,
Sure.
where he goes into the woods, right? The show was one of the first all digital shows. It was amazing. The bright colors and Florida and all this sort of extreme look was incredible at the time. And at the end, they said, well, we want it to feel different. The whole thing has to feel different. He's changed his whole life. He's in a different place. We want the look of it to be different. And I said, why don't you shoot it? Let's shoot it on film. It'll be sort of creamy and grainy and soft, the opposite of what the show had been up to that point. And so they agreed. They were a little scared. I remember when somebody said, how are we going to know that we got it? I had to remind them that for the last 100 years, they've been shooting film pretty successfully and not worrying too much. But it was unusual after all that time shooting digital to go back to film. But it was fantastic for me. I loved it.
Yeah. One compliment I have to give you is your day exteriors pretty universally look excellent. I was wondering if you could give me some tips on shooting a day exterior, because I just had two back-to-back shoots. One was completely overcast days, and then one was piercing sun. And I did not have a COVID shoot, and I'm very, very low budget, so that was not let's say grip heavy.
Yeah. It's I always say that good cinematography sometimes is good scheduling. Like, you got to be on top of the schedule. You got to know where the sun is. You got to know what you're shooting when, and try to chase that backlight around if that's important to you, which usually looks good. It's so easy to shoot with the sun behind you. You're doing a little bounce card or a big fill or something like that. It looks amazing. So I try to push for that. And even with the idea that this is going to be a lot faster, we'll get a lot more work done. If you come around like this and shoot with the sun, I'm going to have to do all these grip things, like you said. So you have to stay on top of the schedule, and try to jump on the weather when you can. And I've had good luck a lot of times, and like the sun comes out at the right time. Other times it can be very harsh. I remember I was shooting in Mexico on a project, and usually look for where the shadows are falling. And I looked around in the middle of the day. I couldn't find a shadow. It was literally a circle right around my feet. It was coming straight down like that. So it was harsh, and I think we ended up trying to soften some of that. But yeah, that's where the grip department really shines. Day exteriors is where they help soften things, take things away, darken, brighten. I try to use natural light. I like bouncing off the ground quite a bit. So instead of bouncing from a vertical, I'll throw white on the ground so that light is sort of coming up. That's one little tool that I like to use. That's true for even day interiors as well. I remember we were on Carnival, and I was bouncing lights off of the dirt. It was
Hmm.
just gray dirt, and I thought, what is that going to look like? The a card or white maybe is too bright, but it was a kind of a gritty, tough, dark, noirish show, and so I was bouncing lights off of the dirt, and it was dark, but it looked really interesting, and it had a certain quality that couldn't get any other way. So yeah, I don't know if I have that many tricks about daylight. It's pretty day work, but it's pretty standard stuff. But yeah, schedule is everything. Getting people up before dawn is a lot of fun, but it's going to pay off.
Yeah. Do you find with I find this as sort of an inexperienced. I shoot film photography, but I
Mm-hmm.
only shot 16 in film school for a little bit, and so the lighting techniques didn't really come from there necessarily. Do you find with digital you have to use a lot more neg, or are you doing how is your the way you shot changed from film to digital? Does it change at all for you?
For day exterior stuff or
No, just
just in
in general,
general?
yeah.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Where you could get away with what I call film lights, movie lights in film, um, and knowing how to manipulate, hard light, things like that, bounce light. Um, I find that you're working with practicals quite a bit. The candle thing is one example, but in a contemporary setting or where you have electric lights, things like that. Now the production design and the lighting that's built into a set becomes a key part of it. It's not peripheral. It's a very key part of how the lighting is going to go on a set. And you see a lot of projects now where the lighting is often built into the set. As a DP, hopefully you have some input with a production designer. Hopefully you have a production designer that has a sense of lighting and how important that is, and they're building stuff into their sets, and that you come onto, and they may be 80% lit by what's there, and you're just sort of controlling aspects of it. So working with practicals, very much more a deal now than ever before. Than in film. In film, it was practicals were sort of there, but not necessarily a key thing. You still had to have film lights and things to get to a certain level of exposure. So that's a big change.
Sure. With Bridgerton, I noticed that you guys didn't. Um, well, I suppose I was going to say you didn't go for the vintage route, but there was no cameras back then, so there's not really a look to mimic.
Yeah.
But you didn't go.
Right.
You didn't go. Let's soften everything out, diffusion, yada yada.
Yeah.
What was the sort of lookbook for Bridgerton? Is because it's very modern. It's a modern sort of retelling of the story as well.
Yeah, I've heard that, and that's good to hear. I'm not sure what we did to do that. I've been thinking about it a lot lately, and obviously we're applying it again. The story is set in a historical place. There's, you said there weren't cameras then, but there's a long history of period films, especially English, English era dramas over the years, and they're often beautiful, and there's something about a period project that gives you a little more freedom to make a stylistic choice. But we looked at a lot of stuff at the time. Barry Lyndon obviously was a big influence. We were on locations that were in Barry Lyndon. We were at this place called Wilton House, which is a location that a lot of scenes took place on we were scouting one day, and I'm like, this feels really familiar. I feel like I've seen this before. And I scrolled back through Barry Lyndon. Sure enough, it was this spectacular room with paintings and all this Baroque stuff in it that he had used. And I found that very little had changed since 1970, whatever it was, when he shot when they shot that movie. So it was, it's inspiring to be in these amazing locations. And we were a little concerned. What we didn't want on Bridgerton was for it to be too precious, to be too rarefied, that it would be this sort of beautiful figurine that you could observe objectively. It was important to everybody, I think, on the show that it have this intimacy and emotional quality to it, that these characters were alive, they were going through these things. We needed to be close to them. We needed to feel what they were feeling and to convey that to the audience. So it wasn't there. I wanted to make sure there wasn't this sort of veil literally or figuratively between the audience and what the characters are going through. So I think that's what you mean when you say modern. That's what I think is happening with the show, that it's connecting to people. It doesn't feel so precious that it's this period thing that you can, sort of appreciate, but not really get too involved in. Um, Having said that, there's still these amazing sort of images and tableaus that were important for me to get to set the thing, but they have a sort of they're a little funny. It's funny that they're in this massive room and that these characters look the way they look and that this romantic story is going on in there. So there's a bit of irony to it, which I think helps. You don't have to take it too seriously, but the actors, are conveying a lot of emotion. It was important to be with them, capture that, have the camera move with them, and their energy drives how the camera moves. I didn't want them to feel locked into a place that was the perfect light with the window or whatever. So it was a sort of a mix of those two things, that we create something that was beautiful, but and a bit like a fable, a fairy tale almost, but that it still have an emotional basis behind it.
Yeah. If I were to be bold, I would suggest that maybe the people's perception of the modernity of it, almost didn't get that one out. The modernity of it is that, we're used to seeing period pieces mimic the older film, very soft. I can't remember what the film is, but it's recent, where everything was shot on like a 15 with no extra lights. And I think that's kind of, I feel like people sort of think of period films as looking like Monty Python and the Holy Grail, just very, very, as you said, veiled. And that veil is not present in Bridgerton.
Yeah, it feels like it's happening in real time right in front of you. It was important to me to be sort of clean. And this is kind of in the style of how I was intended to light it. And what we did in post-production as well was that it feel lifted, as the word that I kept using. I didn't want it to be bright and garish. I didn't want it to feel dour, or it was the opposite of gritty. And in fact, I feel like it's an antidote to a lot of the dark shows that are out there right now, which are capturing something amazing. That's what a lot of people are feeling. But this was the opposite of that. This was not going to be that. This was going to be something with color and romance and a fairy tale quality to it, and fun in that way. And so I wanted all of that to be represented in those things stylistically. And in post-production, we found a way. That's why I can't say enough about Pankaj, my color timer, is that he found a cinematic quality of lifting these colors and making all that stuff come through without it being, all yellow or all orange and dark or sort of bright and garish. He found a way to keep it. It's funny. It's sort of colorful but muted. So the colors are there, but they're not harsh. The full range is there, but they're not. There's not this unified. There's not this sort of monochromatic color, which happens a lot. I've certainly done it myself, where you use a filter or something to create a sense of time and period.
Yeah. Has the look of the show changed, or the attack that you guys are taking on the show changed between the first season and this one, or is it just right back at it?
Right back at it, pretty much. We're working with a different showrunner this year who's come in, Tom Verica, amazing director, also an actor. You've seen him in How to Get Away with Murder and a lot of shows over the years. And he's an amazing director, and he's our sort of creative production executive with Shondaland. And he grabbed on a couple of the things where we pushed things a little bit. We did some slant focus things. I did some color correction for flashbacks, things like that. And he said, yes, let's do more of that. Let's feel free to push that further. So we're doing some of the things that we sort of started doing. He wanted to expand that. And so I feel very free this year. Obviously, we know what the show is supposed to look like. And the feeling is great because now we can I feel more comfortable expanding on a lot of that stuff. There's a bit timidity at the beginning because you're trying to figure out what people like, what works, what doesn't work at the beginning. We started right in production. It wasn't like a pilot that, was a guide, and then we did the series. We started right in. First 2 episodes we shot was 1 and 6. So we were already in the middle of the series. On the first day, we were shooting episode 6. So we had to know where we were headed. So there was a bit of trial and error to get to a certain point, but I had a pretty good idea of what I thought the show should be. And now it's much more comfortable in a way that, we feel we know what the show is supposed to look like, and, we can attack that every day.
Yeah. Do you, the fan response to the show was wild. Like, I remember it could have been, time is a flat circle. I don't even remember when the first season came out, but I just remember everyone loving it. Do you how do you find that kind of like, oh, thank you, or do you kind of take that in and enjoy that?
Well, I've had a few successes in my career, and
certainly,
it's great. It's and I love being under the radar. It would be tough to be on a project that's expected to do a huge audience or make a lot of money or whatever. So it's fun. I like the underdog. I'm from Chicago. We're underdogs. I'm a Cub fan, underdogs. So the whole underdog thing appeals to me, and it's fun to be sort of below the radar as I sort of felt we were last year, and then all of a sudden have this amazing success. So it's exciting. It's thrilling. And to be at this point in my career, to have this kind of thing happening is, I'm grateful for it. It's incredible. It came out last Christmas, and within about 2 or 3 days, I think that it just hit like crazy. We sort of knew we had an audience with the books were quite popular. So we knew we would be popular with, women in Brazil, stuff like that. I had no idea that it would be this huge or around the world. So yeah, it's thrilling, and it's exciting to come back knowing that audience is expecting and waiting for us to deliver. So, the stakes are high. We want it to be good again. We want to give the audience something worthy of their attention again. So hopefully we'll pull that off again.
For sure. Well, we're about on time, so thank you so much for spending the past hour with me. I really enjoyed that conversation, and hopefully we can have you back on when you've got more you want to talk about.
That's great. Well, thank you, Kenny. You were fantastic. You know your stuff, and it was a pleasure to talk to you.
Awesome. Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Frame and Reference is an Owlbot production. It's produced and edited by me, Kenny McMillan, and distributed by ProVideo Coalition. Our theme song is written and performed by Mark Pelly, and the F at our Mattbox logo was designed by Nate Truax of Truax Branding Company. You can read or watch the podcast you've just heard by going to provideocoalition.com or youtube.com/owlbot, respectively. And as always, thanks for listening.